We like to believe that the best product always wins. Better features, smarter design, faster code. But history shows us a completely different story. In the early days of the internet, one company ruled everything: Netscape. They built the most important software on Earth. At its peak, it controlled nearly 80% of the web. For millions of people, Netscape was the internet. And then, it disappeared. How does a multi-billion-dollar empire vanish? This wasn't a normal business failure. It was a calculated, brutal corporate war. Microsoft saw this tiny startup as a deadly threat, but they didn't win with better technology. They won by weaponizing the power of the default. Microsoft's aggressive moves triggered one of the biggest antitrust cases in tech history.
What Microsoft has been doing through a wide variety of illegal business practices is leveraging its Windows monopoly operating system to force its other software products on consumers.
It exposed the darkest corners of corporate power.
Computer giant Microsoft is facing the prospect of a government-enforced breakup after losing its monopoly case in a US court.
But the story doesn't end there, because that war created the exact blueprint for how the modern digital world works today. Before 1994, the internet looked completely different. Most people had never seen it. It mostly existed inside universities and government labs, and using it was difficult. You had to type commands. Pages were mostly text. No images, no design. For the average person, the internet felt distant, almost inaccessible. But then something changed. A small startup appeared in Silicon Valley. It was called Netscape. The company was founded by entrepreneur Jim Clark and a young programmer named Mark Andreessen. They believed something radical. The web could become mainstream, not just for scientists, not just for universities, for everyone. So they built a browser, a completely new one. It was called Netscape Navigator, and it felt completely different. Pages could show images next to text. You could click links, no commands, just a mouse. For the first time, exploring the web felt simple, even exciting. And Netscape made a very smart decision. The browser was free. Anyone could download it. Anyone could explore the web. But businesses had to buy licenses. That simple strategy did two things: explosive growth and steady revenue. Navigator spread incredibly fast. Within months, Netscape controlled more than 80% of the browser market. For a young startup, that kind of dominance was almost unheard of. And in Silicon Valley, that kind of power never goes unnoticed. Suddenly, Netscape wasn't just another software company. It was becoming a cultural phenomenon. Then came August 1995. Netscape went public, and Wall Street went crazy. The stock price doubled on the first day. The company was suddenly worth nearly $3 billion, even though profits were still small. That moment changed Silicon Valley forever. Investors realized something enormous. The internet wasn't just an experiment, it was the future. And Netscape looked like the company controlling the gateway to that future. But there was one problem. Someone else had noticed this too. Inside Microsoft headquarters, executives were beginning to realize something alarming. Because the browser might become the most important software in the world, and they didn't control it. For a brief moment, Netscape looked unstoppable. But their sudden success had an unintended consequence. It woke up a sleeping giant, Microsoft. The mood inside Microsoft was changing. They had been slow to see the internet's potential, and now Netscape was everywhere. When Netscape went public, that was the moment they couldn't ignore anymore. So Gates wrote a memo. It had a dramatic title, The Internet Tidal Wave. The message was simple. The internet was about to change everything, and Microsoft was dangerously behind. Netscape wasn't just a competitor. It could destroy Microsoft's entire business. If the browser became the center of software, the operating system underneath it might not matter anymore. And that operating system was Microsoft's entire business. Microsoft had to act. And they decided to solve it the only way they knew how, by going to war. In 1995, Microsoft called Netscape to a meeting. They made an offer. Netscape focuses on Windows. We take the rest of the market. Netscape refused. And that decision changed everything, because from that moment on, the browser war had officially begun. Microsoft launched its own browser, Internet Explorer, August 1995. Version 1 was almost laughably bad. It was mostly the old browser from another company, just with a new look. But Microsoft didn't need a better product. They had something else, a monopoly. Windows ran on over 90% of the world's computers. That was the weapon. The attack came in 3 devastating parts. First, price. Microsoft made Explorer completely free. Personal use, business use, everyone. Netscape's main revenue, gone. Second, scale. Microsoft invested enormous resources into the browser. By the late 90s, Explorer had over 1,000 developers, an annual budget of more than $100 million. Netscape, a small company, barely enough profit to fight back. Third, bundling. Explorer became part of Windows. By Windows 95, it was the default browser, pre-installed, ready, no download required, no installation required. Just open your computer, and the browser is already there. By Explorer 4, it was almost impossible to remove. For most users, Explorer wasn't a choice, it was just there. Microsoft wasn't subtle about its strategy. They made exclusive deals with PC manufacturers, companies like Dell and Compaq. Explorer was promoted, Netscape was hidden. Sometimes it was difficult to install, sometimes it mysteriously failed. One bug became famous, the shell execute bug. On some systems, Netscape simply wouldn't install properly. Coincidence? Maybe, but the damage was real. The results were brutal. In 1996, Netscape still controlled most of the browser market, nearly 80%. But the decline came fast. By 1998, Netscape had fallen below 50%, and the fall continued. By 2002, Explorer controlled the web, about 95% market share. The war seemed over. Microsoft didn't just win. They controlled the gateway to the internet. And Netscape, the company that once defined the web, was now a ghost. Netscape was running out of options. By early 1998, the company was facing financial ruin. And yet, they tried one last gamble. In January, Netscape made its browser free for everyone, just like Explorer. At first glance, this looked like surrender. But then came the real surprise. Netscape did something no major software company had done before. They decided to open source the browser. They released it to the public entire codebase. At the time, it looked crazy. Some called it desperation, others called it suicide, because giving away your software means you're losing. Later that year, a bigger move arrived. The internet giant AOL was acquiring Netscape. The deal was worth $4.2 billion. By the time it closed in 1999, the value had grown to almost $10 billion. On paper, it looked like a rescue, a lifeline, but it wasn't. It was more like a funeral procession. AOL didn't care about the browser. They wanted something else. Traffic, users, portals. Development stalled. And when Netscape 6 finally launched in 2000, it was a disaster. Slow, buggy, late. Most users had already moved on. The browser war was effectively over. But while Netscape was collapsing, someone else was watching Microsoft, the United States government. In May 1998, the United States Department of Justice filed an antitrust lawsuit. Microsoft had abused its power, specifically its monopoly over Windows. The government argued that Microsoft used Windows to destroy competitors, and Netscape was the star victim. The trial exposed internal emails, private conversations, and one line became infamous: "We will cut off Netscape's air supply." In 2000, the court reached a dramatic conclusion. Microsoft had acted illegally. The judge proposed a shocking punishment: break the company apart, 2 separate corporations, one for Windows, one for everything else. Microsoft appealed the decision, and the case dragged on. Eventually, the breakup order was overturned. Microsoft was still ruled a monopoly, but the punishment was weaker. In the end, the case ended in a settlement. No breakup, no dramatic consequences. Microsoft remained intact, and Netscape was already gone. Years later, the final chapter arrived. In 2008, AOL officially ended support for Netscape Navigator. The browser that once defined the internet was finally gone. One company controlled almost everything. Internet Explorer, around 95% of the web. Total dominance, or at least that's what it looked like. For years, there was no real competition, no pressure, no urgency. And slowly, innovation stopped. Browsers became slower, less secure, more fragile. But here's the strange part. This story was never just about browsers. It was about something bigger, a system, and that system is still running today. At first, it looks like Microsoft won because of technology, but that's not true. The real weapon was simpler, distribution. Every time someone bought a computer, they also got a browser. It was already there, pre-installed, no setup, no decision, no effort. Because most people don't choose software. They use whatever is already installed. Microsoft understood this early. Control the platform and you control the market. Today, you see this everywhere. Phones ship with default apps. Operating systems promote their own apps and services. Platforms guide your choices before you even notice. The lesson was simple. Control the default, and you control everything. But distribution was only part of the story. There was something else, something quieter, human behavior. Once people started using Explorer, most of them never switched. Not because it was perfect, because switching required effort. Download a new browser, install it, move your bookmarks, learn something new. For many people, that was already too much, so they stayed. And that tiny friction scaled to millions of users. Habits formed, and habits are powerful. In technology, habits become monopolies. A small behavior repeated by millions of people becomes power. And tech companies know this. Getting users once isn't enough. You have to become their habit, the thing they open without thinking. But this is where the story takes a turn, because Netscape didn't just disappear. It left something behind, something important. Back in 1998, when Netscape was collapsing, they made a strange decision. They gave away their code to the public. At the time, it looked like desperation, maybe even a mistake, but it wasn't, because that decision started a project, Mozilla.
Let's hear a little Mozilla! Mozilla! Mozilla!
At first, almost no one paid attention. A small group of developers, working quietly, volunteers, they took the old Netscape code, messy, outdated, almost abandoned, and they started rebuilding it, piece by piece. No big company, no big funding, just code and time. For years, nothing happened. Then, in 2004, something changed. Mozilla released a new browser, Firefox. And suddenly, the story wasn't over. Firefox wasn't just another browser. It was proof that Netscape's final gamble had worked. Open source. A browser anyone could look inside, anyone could improve, anyone could build on. And most importantly, it didn't belong to a monopoly. It was independent. For the first time in nearly a decade, Internet Explorer had a real rival. Firefox was faster, safer, different. But more than that, it revived a powerful idea. The internet should remain open. Netscape, the company, had died, but Netscape, the idea, survived. Today, the original players are mostly gone. Netscape Navigator is history. Even Internet Explorer eventually faded away. But the rules they revealed are still shaping the world. Look at your phone, the apps you use, the browser you open, the defaults you never question. This is the same system. Control distribution, build habits, own the market. What started as a browser war became a blueprint for the modern tech industry. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.